Hi, students. Glad you came to school today. Uh, Today, I'm going to read you a book. And the reason why is because I don't know if you've been hearing the reports, but there's been a lot of um, coronavirus issues on the Navajo Nation, um, which is in Arizona, New Mexico, and Utah. And in the Navajo people have been struggling with the coronavirus because they live in a rural area. There are not a lot of health facilities available. So, in honor of the Navajo people, I decided to read you this great book I have. It's called Chester Nez and the Unbreakable Code, and this is the book that I got from our classroom. And that's the front. And the author is Joseph Bruchak, and it's illustrated. The drawings are by Liz Amini Holmes. That's the front cover. Here's the back cover. Show some cool pictures. I'll read it to you what the back says, okay? It says, Chester Nez was a boy told to give up his Navajo roots. He became a man who used his native language to help America to victory. And it says down here at the bottom, it says, to be productive citizens, our children must learn the authentic history of our great nation from a young age. This is a fine retelling of the Chester Nez story for a young audience. It evokes Navajo culture and shows how important the contributions made by Native Americans are to our country. That was written by Judith Avila. And so now, without any further ado, let's get started. All right, here's the title page. And this is Chester Nez and the Unbreakable Code, a Navajo Code Talker story. Okay, and it kind of shows a picture of a communication device, some sort of old-fashioned radio from World War II that they used to contact the U.S. Army, or whatever branch they were using to contact each other. So it's like a radio. All right, let's get started. So here's the first page I'm going to read. Looks like it shows some people in the back of a pickup. Let's see what it says. It says October 1929. That's a long time ago. Month of small wind. When Bitoli was 8 years old, the time came for him to go to boarding school. He had to leave his family, his home, and the goats and sheep he loved and took care of. He climbed into the back of the missionary's truck. You need an English name, the missionary said. Bitoli's name was Navajo, like he was. You will be Chester, the man said. All right, next page. All right. It says here, at Fort Defiance School, the matrons shaved off Chester's long hair and gave him a blue uniform to wear. They made him use English, a language he never spoken, and when Chester spoke Navajo, the matrons washed out his mouth with yellow soap. Navajo is bad. Speak only English. All right, next page. It says here, many years earlier, in the 1860s, that's way back, the U.S. Army had held Navajos captive at Fort Defiance. From there, the Army forced the Navajos to go on the Long Walk, a journey of 300 miles into what is now New Mexico. Many people suffered and died. Fort Defiance was now a boarding school for Navajo children, but some of the youngest students had dreams because of the fort's history. Chester did his best to calm their fears at night. He reminded them they were not alone. They still had families back home. Okay, moving on. All right. Going to read this page next, and then that one. June 1932, month of big planting. Over the summer, Chester returned home where he could again speak the sacred language the holy people had given the Navajos long ago. When he cared for the sheep and goats and prayed using corn pollen, he felt like a real Navajo living the right way. His heart was strong again. Being home took away the loneliness Chester felt at school. There he is. All right. September 1932, month of half. Chester returned to school where he was again told his Navajo language was worthless. You must only use English to survive in the white man's world, the matron said. That was not nice of her. All right. Here's the next two pages I'm going to read. All right. It says here, Chester knew he might need to live in the white man's world one day. In that world, speaking English was essential, so he worked hard and did well. Chester enjoyed learning and wanted to prove his worth. He also learned to pray the Catholic way and served as an altar boy. The Catholic way was good, but so was the Navajo way. All right, next page. Though he spoke English in school, Chester kept his love for his Navajo language and their people. He decided to never break the ties that bound him to them. There he is. And that's his traditional home in the background. All right, next page. All right, here's the next two pages I'm going to read you. All right. This guy kind of looks like me. I used to have a black mustache like that. All right, it says here December 1941. Now it's later, but still a long time ago. Month of crusted snow. Chester was in 10th grade when the school principal called the students together. The Japanese Empire attacked us at Pearl Harbor, he said. We are at war. So that was the beginning of America's involvement in World War II. Next page. The United States had fought the Navajos years ago, but now the United States was their country too. Chester thought about how his ancestors stood up against enemies. He should act with the same courage. Protecting his homeland was an honor. I am a warrior, Chester said to himself. I will fight for this land. And there he is with some other young Navajo men listening to the principal. All right, next two pages. All right, we have April 1942, month of big plant. Recruiters from the U.S. Marine Corps came to the reservation. We need Navajo men who speak English and Navajo, they said. The U.S. military needed a new way to send its secret messages. The messages were sent in code over the radio, but since anyone's radio could receive those messages, the enemy could hear them too. The Japanese had broken every American code. The Marines tried using a coding machine, the shackle, to create an unbreakable code, but the machine took too long to encode and decode messages. So there's a picture of a couple of Marines, and then here's some of the young Navajo men. All right, next page. It says here, then a former soldier, a missionary's son, who had once lived on the Navajo's reservation, suggested using Navajo, a language almost impossible for non-Navajos to speak. The Marines agreed to try it. Many Navajos volunteered to join the Marines, but only 29 were chosen, including Chester. They became platoon 382. Suddenly, the language he had been told to forget was important. Chester was proud he had never given up speaking Navajo. And there they are marching off to war. All right, next page. All right. All right, here are the next two pages. All right, we have, it says June 1942, month of big planting. After basic training, platoon 382 went to Camp Elliott near San Diego, California. An officer took the platoon into a room. Create an unbreakable code, he told them. Start by choosing one word for every letter of the English alphabet. Then the officer left, locking the 29 men in that room. Chester wondered how they would begin. Then one of the men, Gene Crawford, spoke up. He knew how military codes work. Make every word clear and different from every other, he said to the others. So there were the men, the Navajo men, young men, trying to create a code. All right. Next, it says here, they used English words for each letter of the alphabet. A was for ant, B was hour, and C was cat. Wait a minute. Then they chose the Navajo word for each of those English words. Ant was Wolachi. Bear was Shush. Cat was Moasi. By the end of the first day, they had the whole alphabet. A few weeks later, 3 more Navajo men joined the team. Now, 32 soldiers were creating the code and learning to use it. Instead of spelling out some items in the English alphabet, they chose Navajo words to represent them. Battleship became Lotso, which means whale. Bombs were Aishi, or eggs. There was a lot to remember, but Chester enjoyed what they were doing and had an excellent memories. And here's some pictures of some Native American motif, Native American artists' art. All right, moving on. Next page. Okay, here we go. It's a September 1942, month of half. After 13 weeks, Platoon 382 demonstrated their code to Marine officials. Expert code breakers could not break it. The code was strong. The code was efficient too. The shackle code machine took 4 hours to encrypt and decrypt a message Navajos could send and receive in less than 3 minutes. The Navajo language solved the Marines' communication problem. All right, good for them. Next page. The military ordered the platoon to keep the code a secret. Only commanders and officers knew about the Navajo code. 2 men stayed behind to teach new Navajo recruits, while Chester and the rest of the code talkers shipped out to the Pacific. The time had come to use the code in battle. Wow. There it is. Take a look. Can you see the ship in the background? Here, see, he's getting on a ship to go fight in the Pacific theater on the islands. All right, next page. Now they're wearing helmets. They're actually in the battle zone. All right, here we go. When their boat reached the island of Guadalcanal, Chester and his partner, Roy Begay, waded ashore. They dug a foxhole in the sand, and then they were ready. When a runner handed them their first message, they radioed it to 2 code talkers on the ship offshore. Bena Ali Sososi means enemy. Aka Adone Ato, machine gun nest. Nish Najit Gata Dikan, on your right flank. Adil Tahi means destroy. So there you go. These guys are using the language, Navajo language, to give instructions to the fighting forces. By the way, I'll just continue. Here we go. Next 2 pages I'm going to read you. All right, we have minutes after their message was received, artillery fire, that's like cannons, hit the machine gun nest. Chester shouted, "You see that?" Their Navajo code was working. Chester and the other code talkers sent messages on Guadalcanal for many months until the Japanese were defeated. Then they were sent to other islands in the Pacific. So the war raged on. They went to other islands. Here's some of the explosions. Here's the code talkers calling in the coordinates of where they want the bombs to fall or shells to fall. All right, next page. The soldiers saw terrible things in combat. They dodged artillery fire, witnessed explosions, and watched men die. Chester was worn out and ill, but kept working. Every day he prayed in Navajo, using corn pollen from his medicine bag. The Navajo gave him strength. The Navajo way gave him strength and helped him survive until he could go home. There he is, just hanging on in that foxhole. A foxhole is a hole you dig out so you don't get hit by bullets. Uh-oh, excuse me. All right, next page. It says here, January 1945, a month of small eagle. Chester was finally home, but he'd seen too much death. He felt at times as if he were dead too. Chester could not tell anyone, not even his family, about the Navajo code. It was still a secret. Keeping that secret brought back the loneliness that hurt so much when he first went to school. Wow, it looks like he's having a nightmare. And I see sharks because there was a lot of sharks in the water of the Pacific Ocean where he was on the island. And it looks like he's crawled up in a fetal position in the dirt. I think it's a nightmare. Yeah. Poor guy. Today they call that PTSD. What does that stand for? It's a type of trauma you get when you're in the war. All right, here we go. All right, it says here, Chester's family knew he needed help. They arranged an enemy way, which is a 4-day long ceremony to help someone exposed to the evil of war. This ceremony was also done for children returning from boarding schools like Fort Defiance. Chester knew that being at school with its military structure and harsh discipline was similar to enduring war. So in a way, he had to go to 2 wars. One when he was a boy, and they took him away from his family, his culture, the reservation, and that was traumatic. And then when he went to war, he had more trauma. So this guy needed this ceremony to kind of get his mental health back together. Next page. The ceremony restored Chester to the trail of beauty and the right way. He no longer dreamed of war. And there he is. It looks like that might be I don't know if that's him in both pictures or if this is a medicine man and that's Chester. I'm not sure. Helping him out. Yeah. All right, next page. All right, it says here September 1945, month and a half. 8 months after Chester came home, the Japanese surrendered and the war was over. The Navajo Code had been vital to the war effort. Code talkers had served with every Marine unit. By the end of the war, more than 400 Navajos had served as code talkers. They had been in school that their language they had been told in school that their language was no good, but they had proven that wasn't true. The Navajo Code helped win World War II. All right, here's a picture of some of his souvenirs from the war. But that necklace, that blue necklace, that's turquoise from the Navajo Nation. And there's some pictures and some other documents he brought back. All right, almost done. Last couple pages. It says here, like his people who survived the long walk, Chester had never forgotten his Navajo heritage. Despite being told to give up his Navajo language and culture, he found ways to merge them with the white man's world. His spirit stayed unbroken. He kept his feet on the trail of beauty. And there he is, making some beautiful Navajo art. Can you see it? Now, I got one more page to read over here. Let's see what it says. It says author's note. It says Chester Nez went on to serve stateside in the Korean War. So I guess that was like the next war after World War II. And I guess he stayed in the military and started helping the Korean War, but he didn't go over there to fight. He did it from home, so to speak. So I'll read it. It says here, let me get some water. It says here, Chester Nez went on to serve stateside from the Korean War, from which he was discharged as a corporal. Chester also continued his schooling at the University of Kansas from 1946 to 1952, where he studied commercial art. He married, had children, and gained a reputation as an artist without telling anyone about his role as a code talker. Because he was sworn to secrecy, the Marines said, don't ever tell anybody what you did, because then they'll know the code. And then years have gone by, obviously, and Chester and the other Navajo code talkers kept their secret. Now, finally, in 1968, the military decided that with new technology, the Navajo code was no longer needed. The code was declassified and their secret was released after 29 years. In 1982, President Ronald Reagan declared August 14th National Code Talkers Day, and more people began to learn their story. In December 2000, President Bill Clinton signed into law an act honoring the code talkers. The original 29 were given gold medals, and all the code talkers who followed were given silver ones. Chester appreciated being invited to the White House and being given those honors. But what he felt about was that he had been able to live the right way as a Navajo, holding on to his language and traditions despite being told in school to give up his culture. Eventually, with the help of Judith Avila, that's the lady who wrote this, I hear. It says Chester decided to tell his story. It was published in 2011 as the book Code Talker, the first and only memoir by one of the original Navajo code talkers of World War II. Chester was the last survivor of the 29 I lost my place. Chester was the last survivor of the 29 original Navajo recruits who created the Unbreakable Code. He passed away on June 4th, 2014, at the age of 93. Wow. At his home in, get this, Albuquerque, New Mexico. Chester's name and that of hundreds of other Navajo men who served as code talkers in World War II can be seen on the brick of the Veterans Memorial in Window Rock, Arizona, in the heart of the Navajo Nation. Wow, that was a great story. And now in the back, it shows the code. Here's the code. I know you can't see it very well, but when you can check this book out of the library and study it, it just says all kinds. So the letter A was the Navajo word Wolachi. And the literal translation of Wolachi means ant, little bugs that crawl on the ground. But anyway, I'm not going to read all these because my pronunciation of Navajo is not very good, but you guys, like I said, can look at it. So what else? It also shows a timeline. Timelines are important because they show you when things happen. And what's interesting is it says here that he was born in January 23 in New Mexico. So he's from our state. Now, here is a picture of two people. This is the man who wrote the book. He compiled it from the book that I told you earlier had been published about him. And this is the woman who drew the pictures. So all these wonderful pictures were drawn by this woman. Let's see. She lives in California, and the man is from New York. But like I said, this story came from a book that Chester Nez actually wrote or had help writing. I forgot what the name of it was. Yeah, it says here he wrote a book with Judith Avila. She helped him, get the book ready. That came out in 2011 called Code Talker, the First and Only Memoir. That means like story by one of the original Navajo code talkers. So this was a very, very interesting book. I hope you guys like it. I hope you're doing well. I hope you're staying healthy and washing your hands a lot. And keep looking for more videos and do your homework and subscribe to the Duranis YouTube channel. Have a great day, kids. I can't wait to see you again. Bye-bye.